The Republic of Ireland has always been admired and appreciated by everyone who visits its awe-inspiring coastlines and its abundantly fertile, lush landscapes. The tranquility of Southern Ireland is undoubtedly incomparable, with her uncanny knack to stop you in your tracks. You'd have to go a long way to find another paradise quite so alluring. However, looks can very often deceive us, and despite Ireland's undeniable charm and charisma, there lurks an ever-present, darker world, inhabited with apparitions so terrifying they often leave a bitter impact on those who bear witness. Folklore warns of vengeful fairies who terrifyingly adopt human forms to live alongside unsuspecting mortals. Legend tells of these ethereal beings possessing either the ability to perform kindly deeds or the power to harness evil, telling of wicked fairies carrying away young human children, murdering them and replacing them with a sinister imposter. A most unsettling thought indeed, and just one of the reasons this glorious country is so steeped in paranormal accounts. Located in County Offlay sits the formidable Charleville Castle. Built in 1641, the castle has not always enjoyed occupation. Costly projects have taken a huge toll on this dramatic dwelling, and charitable trusts have stepped in over the years to ensure this magnificent building retains its resplendence. Boasting a rich, intriguing past, this castle is bound to hold secrets and mysteries that we mere mortals can only begin to comprehend and make any sense of. Possibly the most frequently recorded sighting at the castle is that of a young girl, known only as Harriet. Believed to be the youngest daughter of the 3rd Earl of Charleville, Harriet was a sprightly, happy little thing, with a tremendous vim for life and a great liking for fun and practical jokes. It was often remarked that Harriet's infectious mischief would rub off on anybody she met. She brought terrific joy to all those around her. One afternoon in April 1861, young Harriet had ventured up the steep stairs of the castle to wash her hands in preparation for the family's evening meal. True to form, in a bid to make her mother laugh, Harriet slid playfully down the banister towards her apprehensive parents who were waiting at the foot of the stairs. Tragically, Harriet's tiny, still damp hands lost their grip, and she fell for what seemed like an eternity to the cold stone floor which claimed her. According to rumour, the child's head split open as would a large fruit, releasing copious amounts of the most crimson blood, which poured like a river all over the floor. Understandably, Harriet's parents were inconsolable and never came to terms with their beloved child's untimely death. The disturbing thing is, Harriet's soul does not seem to acknowledge her own departure from this life, as frequent sightings of the girl would suggest. Usually seen by the stairs where she perished, Harriet does not appear to stray far from this spot when she visits the unsuspecting and often ill-prepared. One couple from Lanarkshire told of a very strange encounter they experienced with the child. Whilst busy admiring the castle's intricate staircase, the young couple noticed a young, fair-haired girl sat at the top of the stairs. The pair initially felt an odd sensation, as they had not been aware of her on their arrival, and they had been inspecting the stairs for quite some time. Fearing she may meet with harm playing at such height, they approached the girl and asked where her parents were. The child looked up, a broad, beaming smile appearing on her face. "They're in the dining room, I think." The smile disappeared briefly as the curious child inquired who the two visitors were in a soft, inquisitive tone, the way children do. "The girl was lovely, a real treasure," the witness began. "She looked up at us with such innocent fascination. It was unusual, but you just go with it when it's kids, don't you? She was a cute little mite, all tight curly blonde hair, messed up a fair bit. She had huge dimples like a Cabbage Patch doll, squidgy red cheeks, an adorable chubby little face." The witness explained that they, like her, were visiting this old castle to see what it was like inside. To which the child chimed in, "I live here. This is my home." She was quite insistent about it. We were just keen to see her reunited with her parents, as we were concerned for her well-being on those stairs. At that point, the girl replied to somebody. We hadn't heard what was said, but she said she'd go to them now. So we followed to ensure the child's safety. She beetled off along the corridor. She certainly seemed to know the place well. We just figured she came here with her family regularly. Then, to our total astonishment, she melted away in front of us. I wouldn't have believed it if my partner, Robin, hadn't been there too. The couple are not alone in their account. Many claim to have had disturbingly similar encounters with Harriet on the stairs. Countless unsuspecting visitors have reported conversing with a friendly little girl who demonstrated a great knowledge of the castle's past and had even shown some guests around various rooms before evaporating into the air, as though she had never stood there. But stand there she does, and alarmingly regularly, as our next account reveals. A woman and her teenage daughter had been touring the castle one afternoon. My daughter, Bethany, was writing an assignment for school on castles and their functions, both past and present. I'd taken her along for a sort of research meets relaxation day, just taking in all the sights and mood of such an old building. We had been there for 4 or 5 hours and both felt tired and were keen to get off home. We'd gotten what we'd come out for. As we made our way past the castle stairs, a small, curly-haired girl darted past us, singing at the top of her voice, and ran directly into a neighbouring room. Beth and I looked puzzled at each other, as there was no sign of any parents accompanying her. Beth approached the child, who was utterly bursting with life. I mean, she was ecstatic and just oozing character. She looked straight at Beth and asked her to chase her. Obligingly, Beth gave chase, and the highly amused little girl howled with laughter and excitement. Assuming the role of the ever-sensible matriarch, I said to the girl we ought to find her mummy now, as she shouldn't be roaming about the place alone. If I'm being honest, I was slightly miffed that her parents had allowed such a small child to wander off unattended. She didn't give an answer. She simply continued galloping about in her own little world. I remember her being very taken with Beth. Beth with her vibrant red hair and rainbow dungarees. I suppose it was a case of like attracting like. Soon, Beth, panting, was worn out. We couldn't keep up, and we both agreed we'd help the girl find her mother and then we'd leave. "Mum and Dad are there, silly!" howled the child in an ear-piercingly high-pitched tone. Beth and I scoured the room, already aware we were the only 3 in the room. It somehow felt that we should, in some way, be doubting ourselves. But no, nobody there. Still feeling uncomfortable with the prospect of leaving this little girl alone, I asked her again, "Where are your parents, sweetheart?" She laughed as though it was the funniest thing she'd ever heard and reiterated what she'd said before, that they were stood there, that they were watching us all play. We were half unnerved to half fed up. We were rather keen by now to get back home. All of a sudden, the girl ran up to the closed door, arms outstretched, exclaiming, "Look, Mummy, the lady can't see you. Why can't she see you? Her eyes don't work." She laughed once more with gusto, such force that I swear the room shuddered. As she ran towards the area where she was talking to what she said was her mother, just like that, in a very instant, the girl was gone. Now, I'm no stranger to the behaviours of children. A mother of 3 and a former headmistress, I am only too familiar with children's mischievous games and imaginations. But this was something unknown. Neither something Beth nor I had experienced in our lives before. I remember looking at Beth. Her face was virtually green. I felt as though my stomach had just hit my knees. We left immediately, both freezing cold, and there was nobody else around that we could tell. We drove the short distance home in complete uninterrupted silence. Neither of us could find a word to say. I've always refused to buy into the concept of ghosts and the supernatural. I believe in science and that strange goings-on can always be neatly explained away by factors such as tiredness, or the misinterpretation of an object. The mistaking of a person, for example, that is revealed to be a little more than an old tree seen in poor light. But this was real. That girl was there. We both saw her, and try as I might, I cannot explain this one away. Harriet seems to be a kindly, innocent soul who enjoys the company of others, without the faintest notion that she herself passed away many years ago. Curiously, some accounts tell of Harriet being accompanied by a small boy, although nobody quite knows who he is. It is well documented that a close family friend of Harriet's bereft mother had been staying at the castle in the years following her death on the stairs. Their only son had gone missing in the confines of the vast castle, which, in light of what happened to their daughter, had created mass panic throughout the place. They quickly initiated an anxious search of the castle, eventually finding the boy alone and wondering what all the fuss was about at the bottom of the stairs where Harriet died. The boy gave an eerie account of how he had gone to explore when a friendly little girl and boy held his hand tight, helping him down the stairs. The small boy detailed how the girl's hands were damp as though newly washed. She was happy, overjoyed to meet him. Recognizing who this was instantaneously, Harriet's grieving mother fled to her room where she would remain to her dying day. Harriet's playful spectre is perhaps light relief in comparison to some of the more unsavoury souls said to inhabit the castle. During the Middle Ages, the plague hit Ireland incredibly hard. Sufferers were hurriedly disposed of in a bid to reduce spread, but in doing so, these poor people died in the most abhorrent ways. Being buried alive, a horrific prospect was their horrendous fate. It's hardly a great surprise that these many tortured souls refuse to simply haunt idly. They can often be heard screeching, wailing, pleading in sheer desperation for their lives. Many visitors report hearing these ungodly noises. One man leaving in haste on being subjected to the shrill scream of a woman howling, "My baby! My baby!" happened only a year ago. Charleville is without a shadow of a doubt home to numerous bizarre spirits, seemingly disinterested in moving on anywhere other than the place they called home, or the place they met their cruel, painful ends. Believed to have been built in the 13th century, situated in the picturesque county Offlay, sits the magnificent Leap Castle. Leap appeared to magnetize grave misfortune, tempestuous jealousy and hatred, like ants to honey. In 1532, a bitter, bloody rivalry engulfed the O'Carroll family, who then occupied the castle, resulting in one brother savagely butchering another with his sword in the presence of their entire clan. The negative energy of this impressive fortress just seems to sit dormant in the atmosphere, possessing people, turning them poisonous as though a greater, darkly malevolent force is at play. Brimming with supernatural activity, the castle is positively alive with the spirits of yesteryear, determined to stay put in the castle so familiar to them. It proves to be a force not even death can break. Said to walk the halls of this stern castle is the apparition of the Red Lady. Frequently seen, this horrifying spectre is renowned for evoking fear into all who have the misfortune to catch a sighting of her. Clutching a dagger, this fearsome ghoul is often described as on an angry mission, an anguished soul. She has been known to barge past visitors, curse those she takes an unexplainable dislike to, and she was even reported attempting to seduce one woman's husband from across the room. Nobody knows who this rattled woman is, but she has, in the past, reduced grown men to tears. One account details a most unnerving encounter with the crotchety Red Lady. The gentleman had been staying over as a guest at the castle during one summer. It must have been 2 or 3 in the morning. I was in a glorious deep sleep, having had a particularly hectic day before. I remember vividly being softly pushed and pulled to and fro in my sleep by something. In my semi-conscious state, I wasn't entirely sure what was going on. I must add that at the time, I was alone in the creaky old bed when this took place, and it's been on my mind ever since. Waking prematurely on being rocked, I opened my eyes to the sight of a gorgeous woman, long brown hair, pale skin, dressed in a blood-red gown, staring intensely into my face. Well, I was aghast. I asked her what she was doing there and had she somehow gotten lost and ended up here, even though my door was locked from the inside. So I knew anyway this couldn't have been the case. 1,000,001 questions and scenarios sped through my brain like a marble on a helter-skelter. She just stood, motionless. It didn't occur to me once that this woman might not be a living being. She was so real, even wearing a floral perfume. Surely my senses weren't failing me. By now, sitting bolt upright, I asked the woman again what she was doing here, and without warning, she let out the most frightening, heart-stopping scream I'd ever had the misfortune to hear, right in my face. I was mortified and scared at the same time. Was this crazy woman trying to make trouble for me? After all, it doesn't exactly look great, does it? An attractive woman screeching in your locked bedroom? I thought she was mad, completely certifiable. She didn't cease. So panicked, I leapt out of bed, grabbed my dressing gown and ran out of the room, banging frantically at my host's door. I distinctly remember yelling, "Who is this mad woman in my room? Is this some sort of sick joke?" He emerged, looking both confused and irritated, having been so rudely awoken. We both hurried back to my room, me still angrily accusing him of playing terrible jokes, to find her still stood there, looking at us both with a seriously irritated expression, although she had by now thankfully stopped screaming. "What are you doing here?" my friend asked quite sharply, and with that, she turned and walked, unfazed, straight through the wall. We were left flabbergasted. What could you possibly say? Having been witness to many bloody executions and imprisonments, it's hardly surprising that the souls of Leap continually reappear to share their grisly tales of despair with the living. Mortals dabbling in the occult haven't exactly softened matters either, summoning up all sorts of vengeful demons, hell-bent on inflicting pain, misery and suffering to the living. Perhaps the result of such interference with the dead is the Retched sighting of the manifestation known only as It, a vile, stinking, hideous creature described as being around the size of a sheep. This monstrosity has a terrifying decaying face, emitting the most putrid, sulfuric smell, recognizable instantly as the nauseating stench of death and rotting flesh. It has been seen on a number of occasions, oddly preferring to present itself to women, and each account of the creature more disturbing than the last. One female artist was visiting to paint the splendid castle and its grounds when she was subjected to a horrendous ordeal at the hands of It. Whilst painting quietly in the grounds, the artist found her eyes distracted from her canvas by something running about along the green. Trying to ignore it, she brushed it off as a wild animal of sorts and continued on with her work. Moments later, the malodorous, unmistakable smell of death overcame her, prompting her to spin around in her chair. Before her stood a small creature, face melted to one side, reminiscent of bubbling cheese on a slice of toast. He absolutely stank, the witness recalled. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. He stood there, eyes fixed on me. I nearly fell out of my chair with shock. He handed me a small, limp bunch of wild flowers or weeds, which I accepted out of fear more than anything. I thought he was a victim of some awful accident or something. He was blatantly either dead or half dead. I hadn't a clue what it was, and in my 73 years of life, I'd never seen anything similar. Looking down at the wilted weed he had presented, willing him gone, the artist dared to look back at the creature and was relieved and dismayed to see he had vanished. I was numb, she went on. To see something so clearly, just to find it's just disappeared, is, to my mind, sorcery. I recall the smell of the weeds he'd given. They utterly reeked. I promptly dropped the weeds, went inside and scrubbed my hands red raw. I felt lousy. I spent a great deal of time trying to make sense of what had happened, and I just couldn't. I am certain that thing was dead. Whatever it was. It was an abomination, a crime against God. Unlike Charleville Castle, there does not appear to be many welcoming or kindly spectres at Leap, and actually, that is to put it mildly. The troubling visitation from two young girls known as Emily and Charlotte tends to induce the most distress. Often appearing to children and teens, the ghostly apparitions of the two are said to be very nasty, hateful even. Seen almost always together, it is believed Emily perished when she plunged to her death from the battlements. People have witnessed her petrified manifestation falling helplessly through the air to her doom. The case of Charlotte's demise remains unknown, but many terrified visitors have reported seeing the horrendous image of a young girl with a friend dragging her deformed legs behind her. A wholly unappealing sight indeed. It is perhaps for this reason that the two girls appear so venomous and livid. One young woman trudged angrily up to a couple who was sightseeing and demanded they keep their hideously rude daughters under control. The stunned couple asked her what she was talking about, and she confirmed two girls had just followed her about, making snide, cruel and unpleasant remarks to her. One can only imagine the woman's reaction when she discovered the two were in fact not of this world. Whatever the hold Leap Castle has on the living, it is surely pale in comparison to the grip it has over its dead. Visitors should be warned that they will have to be prepared to share their experiences with one or two souls that went long, long before. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, but all the while, don't have nightmares.